you thought alcohol was relaxing you, but actually, like scientifically proven, causes anxiety in certain individuals. So, can you explain just a little bit about what alcohol actually does to our bodies and minds, and maybe some of those like lesser known effects that people don't realize is actually happening?
Yeah, I mean, the big one is the anxiety. And it's so crazy because it's marketed to relax us.
Exactly. I know. I'm
And
like, what the heck?
and you're like, I mean, there's actually, how they have the alcohol in Target, and I was walking by, and there was a bottle on display that's called Relax. And I'm like, this is not true, guys. They're lying. It does not relax you. But I bought into it. I mean, it's fed to us as this. So we start to believe that because that's what we see people do. Maybe after a hard day at work, or, going out for this, or after you put the kids to bed, you do this because that's your treat. And so we marry these associations. But some of the kind of the lesser known things, I really like to focus on the brain. And I think that's what's most important to me, because if I'm not in charge of my mental health and my brain starts to deteriorate, that's my worst fear. And I didn't realize the impact that alcohol has on the brain. Now, again, number one is it increases anxiety, like tenfold. Like Laura McGowan says, it's like pouring gasoline on it. Whatever you're using it for, it's going to magnify it by like 10 to 100. But we don't really notice that. We're just like, well, I'm stressed at work. I'm doing this. No, it's actually from the alcohol. And I just read in someone's Instagram that alcohol remains in your brain for up to 14 days after your last drink.
Whoa. Whoa.
Isn't that
14.
crazy?
I've heard
14
three or
days.
four, but 14.
No.
Wow.
Withdrawals are usually around 3 to 5. Now,
Maybe
alcohol
that's
can
it.
stay in your
Yeah.
body for about 10 days. Now, if
Wow.
you're not going 10 to 14 days without alcohol, you're not really experiencing the benefits, or you're not really giving yourself a break. And what I like to tell people, especially with sleep, how alcohol can impact your sleep, in just one glass of wine is going to can throw off your quality of sleep. It's been proven, scientifically proven. But if you're not even going 10 to 14 days without it, you're probably in a constant state of sleep deprivation, but you don't really notice that. You're like, well, I'm just tired, and the kids, and I have my job, and
Mm,
maybe it's perimenopause, and it could totally be that. But it could also be the alcohol. So if you have an Oura ring, that could also be an indication as well to kind of check how you're sleeping. But knowing that it stays in our brain for about 14 days, and who I love to follow is Doc Amen. He's my favorite. I love him. I love his supplements. I love his research and his also stance on alcohol, because as someone who doesn't have a problem of its impact on your brain. And so how does it hurt it? Number one, it shrinks brain volume. So people who even drink a moderate amount have smaller brains. And number two, it damages your prefrontal cortex. I think that's what's really dangerous about this, is it's taking away, or it's calling off the control center in your brain. Of course, I'm responsible for it, but in my right mind, I didn't want to drink and drive. I
mm-hmm.
didn't want to sleep with this person or do that or
Mm-hmm.
say this, but my control center was offline. It was like
Exactly.
sleeping. So I have no control, and it's scary because I was in blackouts. And so I have no recollection. You're like walking around and you have no idea and no memory of what you did. And that's really freaking scary. So it damages your prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of decision making and your self control. And the third one is really big because it lowers the blood flow to the brain. So this can cause brain fog, poor decision making, trouble concentrating, impulsivity. And all of these things, especially the low blood flow to the brain, increases your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So that's really big. And even there was another study, a Harvard researcher studied over 3,000 people, men and women, and did MRI scans and found that the brain volume shrank in proportion to alcohol consumed, and that there's atrophy, so shrinkage, was greater even in the light to moderate drinkers compared to non-drinkers. So the smaller brain, how it affects your brain, it damages, it hijacks your prefrontal cortex, and also it lowers that blood flow to the brain. But also, I think what goes unnoticed is that so many people who drink are kind of living at 70% of their
Mm-hmm.
potential. And I know John Mayer did this reel, and I thought it was so good. Is that, again, if we're not giving ourselves a big enough break, so I always encourage people to do 30 days but actually 100 days to really feel those benefits of sobriety, to take a break for that long, because it really takes a while to rebalance and recalibrate the chemicals going on, and to help you to feel better, to start to boost dopamine naturally and to feel happier. You really
Mm-hmm.
need that big of a break. But when most people are drinking and not going these periods without it, we're kind of operating at 70% of our true potential. And when you're sober, you're accessing 100%. You're fully there. And so I feel like we're kind of in this matrix of, if you have any inflammation, or if you feel groggy, or not going after that dream job, or not going after what truly lights you up, and even in your job performance, we're not operating at what we could be. And when you're sober, you're really taking in all senses. You really have a lot more energy, more sleep, more time. You feel younger. I mean, even like beauty, the best beauty secret around, stop drinking. It's like it'll
Yeah,
reduce about 10 years
100%.
of your life, or of your on your face.
I was just thinking about that this morning. I was looking at my hair, and I've always had like naturally thin hair, and I'm like, wow, I got some thick hair right now, and it's been 6 months since I stopped
Oh my
drinking. It was
gosh,
amazing. Yes,
congratulations.
thank
That's
you.
amazing.
But
Oh,
you're so right. Like the best beauty secret is stop drinking.
stop. And that's why I say take a before picture, because
Mm,
you don't have to show it to anybody, but I always see it. What you're going to see is your day 1 to day 30, day 60, day 90 is less inflammation, less puffiness. And I always see it in the eyes. The eyes become
hmm
clearer
Clear.
and brighter, and people are happier.